let's create a painterly portrait of a ballerina. We are looking to create a more fine art, more painterly, more narrative to a story rather than a move in this particular one. We've got the most beautiful Eden in a gorgeous dress and tying up point shoes. And I'm looking to create this into a bit more of an atmospheric kind of fine art image. So we're in Lightroom at the moment. If I show you guys the original, you can see it was actually shot on a grey background with some warm toned yellow gels. But I've warmed this up into brown for this particular image as I wanted to warm the set up. We had done a few moves by this point, so the background has ended up getting a bit battered. It's got a few creases. We've got a few things that we need to fix, but all very achievable, all stuff that we can do. So let's just get started. Let's get in there. To go through what I've done in Lightroom, it's not very much. I've warmed up my temperature. A lot of it is done with my color grading to kind of play around with that in the shadows. And then I've just lifted the shadows, played around with the highlights. Not much else has really happened in Lightroom. I'm going to crop the image in, just bring off this area here as it's nothing needed. The rest of this can stay. I'm not doing my composition here in Lightroom. I'm going to be doing that in Photoshop. So I want as much of the image as I can to hold as much quality as I can, but that's about all I really need. So let's do that. And I am ready to take this image into Photoshop to create. So let's bring that edit into Photoshop 24 and wait for that to do its thing. So here we are. Brilliant. So the first thing, as always in my pictures, is clean up. It's always clean up first. Create a nice clean canvas for you to create on. Don't start getting creative and fix the mess later. First thing I'm going to use is my patch tool, and I'm going to look at going around with, there we go, going around and taking off all of these creases on here very, very simply. Now I am going to add a texture into the background. So I'm not looking to make this background neat and clean. I'm just looking at removing anything that is a big solid line, like this lovely dent in my floor here, that could be considered distracting. That there. I'm now using a mix of content aware as well, but again, I'm going to blend out these bits here. We'll deal with this area in a second. Again, we'll deal with this area in a second. So I'm going to grab the whole area here and I'm going to hit delete, fill, content aware, let it do its thing. Sometimes it throws a face or something stupid in there for no apparent reason, but that has created a nice blend there. So I have created a cleaner background. Now I want to soften things up. We can see there's a little dark patch here. We can see there's more here. To soften it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my layer, put that on 50%, and then carry on patch tooling. What that means is the layer that I'm editing is only going to be half visible. So it's going to keep what's underneath. And it kind of merges the two together quite easily for us. So we're going to hit Control J to duplicate. And I'm going to select the dark patch here, move that over. And if I turn that off and on, you can see what's happened. Now, if I put this layer at 50%, you can see we have a merge and it has just softened nicely. Now I can start softening the whole area, any bit that I want to kind of soften here. There we go. I can bring that in however I feel necessary. And I am going to soften the shadow down here a little bit because I want it to blend a bit more. And I can play around with that blend because I have my softening layer. It's not as offensive as it would be normally. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to flatten this. I see no point in keeping a soft layer for the background. We're happy. I'm happy with that. That's absolutely fine. Next thing I'm going to do is my composition. Right now, she is... Oh, look at that. There's an error. Anyone see me do that? Because I missed it. So she's sitting down to the side. She's quite central at the moment. She's sort of sat on the bottom third. But I want to create her... I want her to be more central. I want her to end up being on the right hand third because we have all the dress coming over here. And I want to create an illusion of space. I want to feel like she's in a ballroom. She's somewhere where she almost feels quite alone or in her own world. So I don't want a very tight composition. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change to a square ratio. Now we're just on ratio here. We're not on width, height, resolution. So although this is resizing, it's not resizing the image bigger or smaller. It is keeping the pixels visible as they are. And I will either add to them or remove them. So I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to use the thirds. We'll bring it in a tiny bit. And I want her sat just leaning in, just the action here coming round on the thirds. And because she sat on the floor, I'm going to bring her slightly lower than that third so that we've got this space above. We'll come in just there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to put my fill onto content aware and I'm going to click tick and we'll let that do its thing. Come on. And yeah, perfect. And now I feel like we've got this beautiful, recrop it, this beautiful triangle coming in here, which is much more appealing than having all of that negative space off to the side. So I like that a lot. Now we've got a dark area here and a dark area down here. I actually like that. I think that's quite appealing. We've got the light traveling in from this side. Let's enhance it. Let's create more of a pool of light traveling in. Now, one easy way to do this, there's so many tutorials on this sort of thing, but this is a very, very simple way to do it. Duplicate your layer, Control J, hit Control U, and bring the lightness down. I'm gone half and half, brought it down a bit, but bring it down as much as you want. Click OK. Now, first thing this is doing is it's making it more grey. So this is a brown image. Let's bring the brown back. We're going to hit Control B, and I'm going to add some red, and I'm going to add some yellow, because that makes brown, and I'm going to click OK. So now we have a warm, darker layer. Turn that off. We have our regular and our warm, darker layer. Now, what I'm going to do, you can do this on a mask. You can do this however you want to do it. Let's add a mask for the fun of it. You can do it directly on the layer if you want to, but a mask is editable at least. And using my patch tool, using any kind of selection tool, I'm going to draw a pool of light coming in from here. Bigger at the bottom, smaller at the top, but it doesn't have to be too accurate. And I'm just going to draw that on there, and we're going to right click. Hit there. We're going to, I say right click, I hit L so it moves on to a selection one, and then we right click and go to feather. We can also go to select and feather. Hit feather, and for my camera 600 pixels is normally about right. For yours you might find it's different. It could be 100, it could be 200. 600 pixels gives me a very nice feathered effect. Try it, find out what's right for you. I'm going to click OK, and then because I'm on the layer here, I'm just going to hit delete, and that has deleted that section. You can see it down on my layer. If I hit delete again, it will do it again. You can keep going, but eventually end up with quite a solid sort of shape. So you really want to stick with one or two. Now, if I hit Control D to deselect and turn this off and on, you can see this has created a very simple sort of pool of light vignette just pulling in towards her. We're not looking at creating a beam. That is not what we're doing here. We're looking at just creating a pool of light surrounding her. And then we can turn our opacity down and choose where we want it. I think that looks quite nice. And I'm happy with that. You can keep that layer there or you can flatten it. That is completely up to you. Now, before I move on, I want to do a bit of contour. I want to make sure we're drawn to the face, the arms, and drawn to this area. The lighting has already done this. I've already lit it from that side, but I think we can add a little bit more something to it. So I'm going to hit Control, Shift, and N. We're going to go to Soft Light, and I'm going to add a 50% grey layer. And then using my dodge and my burn, I'm going to highlight the areas I want to highlight and shadow the areas I want to shadow. So I'm going to shadow down the arm here, shadow down here. Most of the shadows are actually really nicely placed. And then the dodge, which is the one I'm more interested in, I'm going to just pat the areas that I want a tiny bit more of a shimmer coming to. Okay, so if I turn that off and on, see it's mostly the arm and the face that I've made a difference to, and it's just drawing us to the face and shaping that arm a little bit more. Perfect. So last thing I want to do is add a bit of texture. I'd like to add some kind of painterly feel texture to the background. So I'm going to go to my backgrounds selection here. I've got all sorts of ones. A lot of these are AI generated because why not? I'm trying out something new. We can see what we like. I quite like these rusticy ones actually. Let's come down. I also use a website called Unsplash, where you can see actually says Unsplash on some of these, which is free, copyright free images. To be honest, I don't think I've actually used any of those for anything in a long time. But kind of like these. I like the rust sort of effect, but I think I'm going to come back to this one here, drag this on top, and I'm just going to drag that effect over the top. Now the color for this is going to be wrong because it's like a greeny yellow. Love the color, definitely wrong for this image. So first thing we want to do is take the color out the image. Now you see it's added itself in as a smart object. We need to rasterize that to make it not a smart object first. Now if you click rasterize layer here, you can see it disappears. And then I'm going to take all the color from it. Control U, saturation, grey. Actually, if you've got textures and things you're using and dropping in as backgrounds, sometimes it's easy just to keep them all in grey because then you can add whatever colour you want. But I'm making this grey because when I put this now on overlay or soft light, there we go, you can see, overlay is definitely the best one for this, that it has adapted to the colour that is on the background already. Now let's turn the opacity down a little bit here. And if I choose to, I can now move this around and choose exactly which area I want to go where and how far I want it to be. But overall, I think that works really well. I'm going to turn the opacity of that down a little bit more. And now we just want to take the layer off of her. Now, there's a trick to this. If you go down and click on your background layer and hit select subject, let it do its thing. It will hopefully find her. I'm hoping it picks the dress up as well, but let's find out. Oh, it did. Fantastic. And then we're going to click back onto our background layer, hit mask. It has put the mask over her, so all we're going to do is hit Control I to invert it, and you can see that we now have it just on her, and we can choose to go over and check that as much as we want. So I like that. I think that's looking nice. I think it's added quite a lot of drama. It's quite painterly. It's got a nice feel. I think it's missing a little bit of something. And I think that something is maybe just colouring. I like the brown and the gold tones. I think they're really pretty. But I think I just want to push it a little bit more. So I'm going to go down to my adjustment layer, click colour balance, and I get this little panel come up at the side here. Now, ignore your midtones. Play with them if you want, but ignore your midtones, go to shadows and highlights. So we want to go first to our shadows, and I want to add some reds and some yellows into our shadows. Do you know what? I'm actually going to take that yellow out, and it's ever so slight on the red. And then I'm going to go to my highlights, and I'm going to put my yellows in there. I was going to go cyan, which does look quite nice, but I think the yellow is going to look good there. And you can play with ticking preserve luminosity on and off. It will do slightly different things depending on the tones of your image. So let's come from there, shadows, and whoa, it's going to change all the colours. Yeah, I think I quite like that. Doesn't need a lot. It's just kind of enhanced it a tiny bit. And then I can turn my opacity down of that however I want to. Yeah, just a little bit richer. I think it's kind of just pushed it a tiny bit more. And it felt a little bit flat. So I feel like that has just lifted the image a little bit from there. So there we go. I'm happy with that. I think we've added a bit of narrative. We've added the space. We've thought about our composition. We've finished the edit. Nothing else really needs doing. The last thing I'll do is I'll go around and look for all my little details, any little things that I want to remove, threads or anything like that. But overall, I think that's a really effective image and essentially ready for anything like social media from there. So thanks for joining me. I hope it was helpful, and I will see you next time.